Hello and welcome to the Resilience of Grief. I'm Rachel S. Heslin, and I have been looking at what is grief for many, many years. I actually started writing a book about it, but I got stuck because there are certain things that you can't write about until you experience them. Then, about 3.5 years ago, my husband passed away of a sudden heart attack, and I got a lot more experience of what it's like on the inside. And when I talk about grief, I'm not just talking about the loss of a loved one, although that's something that is very obvious. There are other types of losses, whether it's a divorce, a job that you've been let go from, kids moving away to college, expectations, the solid ground that you thought that your future held, that doesn't happen. Something changes, and everything you thought was true no longer applies. All of these things can trigger experience of grief. Now, you're probably aware of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler's 5 stages of grief, although it's actually 5+1. Whether it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and Kessler's later observation, making meaning of the loss. Kubler-Ross herself acknowledged that stages isn't really the appropriate word because it's not a linear progression of one to the other, and not everybody goes through everything. I like thinking them as different expressions of the grief experience. It's also important to point out that these are descriptive, not prescriptive. And there are 2 reasons why I think it's important to make that very clear. Because one, it's not inevitable. You can have a loss and not go through any or all of these different expressions of it. Some go through some go through others, some just go straight to acceptance. Some live in some of these. And the other reason that it's important to recognize that these are descriptions is because it's not capital T truth. Now, what I mean by that is life and human experience is just way too complex for us to comprehend capital T truth. We don't know everything that's going on inside. We don't know why. There are so many contributing factors that our little brains just can't handle it. Therefore, what we do is we construct narratives. We create models that describe how we think the world works. And this allows us to navigate all the things that happen in our lives. We can say, oh, there's a cause and effect, there's a reason for it. The interesting thing about models is that you can have different models for the same experience, and they have different purposes. Going back to the 5+1 stages of grief, I found myself asking, under what circumstances is this model so incredibly useful? The answer that I came up with is that it helps normalize the experience of grief. Whatever you're going through is normal. If you're in denial, if you just don't want to even accept that this has happened, it's like, no, I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to do whatever I can to just not even go there. That's normal. It's the way a lot of people deal with it. If you are furious, how could this happen? I know I had this with my husband. Um, a few, I think it was just a few weeks before he passed. I woke up in the middle of the night. He had sleep apnea, which is when the breathing stops for a while. And I wasn't entirely awake. I just knew he was lying next to me, and I couldn't tell if he were breathing. And I thought that he had died, and I completely freaked out, which understandable. And it took a while of him waking up and reassuring me that no, he was there and it was okay. So there was a point after he did pass when I was so pissed off. And I basically yelled at him, "You knew what this would do to me, and you still left." I was angry. And it's normal. It's one of the ways people deal with loss. And there's bargaining. And this one I know I'm going to need tissue for because um, when I gave birth to my biological child, I hemorrhaged. I went through 3 liters of blood, and they had to remove my uterus to keep me from bleeding to death. And I found out later that my husband spent the entire time I was in surgery sitting in the hallway, just begging that he be taken instead. And I am so grateful I got another 18 years with him. It's normal. It is one of the ways that people deal with grief, even impending loss. It shakes things up. This is why I did not wear mascara today. Depression. Depression isn't about sadness. It's not even about sorrow. Depression carries a weight, a numbness, that heaviness, that is a dissociation. It's so you don't feel the pain. And it just kind of aches and weighs down. And it is normal. It is a way that people deal with loss. Acceptance is a state. It's an acknowledgement that regardless of what you would like, it is what it is. We are here in this situation. It happened. So now what? Making meaning can be so valuable. This is the impetus for so many fundraisers, charities, movements. Yes, this person has passed. This thing happened. I had something terrible happen to me. And I am going to take that experience and transform it into something generative and good that makes the world a better place. I mean, for myself, I learned so much from my relationship with my husband, and I wanted to support him better than I had been able to, but he wasn't here anymore. So I took what I learned and used it with my kids. How do I support them and pay it forward? In fact, my TEDx talk, Defense of Victim Mentality, the idea for that came from what I learned from my relationship with my husband. Even though he did not experience what I alluded to in the talk, he had a really challenging childhood. And it was being able to understand what he went through and how it affected him that gave meaning to that talk, because it was essentially a love letter to him. And acceptance and making meaning are normal, and they are ways that people deal with loss. So the next thing I asked myself is, what are the limitations of this 6-part model? And one of the things that I noticed is that it and most grief work that I've experienced and studied does not differentiate between cognitive and somatic grief. Cognitive grief is all of our thoughts about the loss. What does it mean? What does it mean about us? What does it mean about the world? How does it change how we see the world? These are all thoughts, the cognitions around trying to figure out how to process what to do, but it's not the only part of grief. Somatic grief lives in the body. And this is one of the things that I needed to experience to understand, because it is wild. I'll be just going about my day doing things, and I'll see something that triggers a response, and it takes me out. I am filled with grief and tears, and it brings me to my knees, and it's like a wave that passes through, and then it's gone. And it just was something that happened. There was no thought. There was no, oh, I'm sad, or oh, this. So, no, it was a feeling. It was a sensation. And it passed through like a storm. And it left me refreshed and lighter. And this is a part of grief that is also normal. Another thing that I find interesting that could be seen as a limitation of the Kubler-Ross and Kessler model is that when you look at it, a lot of the expressions are actually about avoiding grief. They're all different ways to not acknowledge the loss and not sit with it is what it is. Looking at that, I started thinking, well, what might be a different model? Now, notice I don't say a better model. All models are wrong, but some of them are useful. What might be a different way of looking at it that could expand and deepen our understanding of what grief is? What if it's not an aberration? What if it's not something that exists outside of normal life, but is actually an integral part of being alive? If that's true, what if there is a purpose to grief? That's the question I've been playing. Human beings need to have dreams, goals, at the very least, expectations for the future. We need to have some idea of what's out there so that we can expand and grow and just thrive, moving towards these things. We need to know that there is more than just now. There is more than our past, that there is a reason to live and strive and just be and continue. At the same time, things happen. We only have so much control. Okay, this just came up and I have to share it. It sounds a bit tangential, but it actually is very relevant. I I saved the copy of Time magazine that has Richard Nixon on the cover, and it's when he died, and it was his memorial issue. The reason that I saved it is because at the very top is a little tiny blurb that's an interview with Boris Yeltsin. Now, the reason this is important and the timing of it is I knew that Boris Yeltsin was supposed to have the cover of Time magazine. And his PR group had put so much energy and effort in the negotiations that, yes, this was going to be the big thing where he is presented to the American people as the head of Russia. And at the last minute, Richard Nixon had the audacity to die. And all that work that Yeltsin's group did came to naught, and he never got the cover. It's not just losing people that is a loss. Things happen we can't control. I saved that as a reminder to myself that no matter how much work I put into something, no matter how much it looks like everything is going to go exactly the way that I planned, things happen. There are different ways that we can approach this. We can either, well, it different people react in different ways. What I am looking at are those situations where we really wanted it. We wanted that dream to come true. And it didn't. And there is often a tendency to go numb and to ignore that it mattered. Say, oh, well, it didn't matter. It wasn't that big of a deal. And push down the grief. There is often a desire to not try again because it hurt. If you don't have control, why bother? If it's not going to happen, then why bother? But that reduces our ability to live because the truth is dreams don't always come true. Our expectations disappear. The rug gets pulled out from under us and we're lost. We need a way to reconcile our dreams, our desires, the belief that we can move forward, that we can make a difference, with the fact that it doesn't happen because that's the way life is. And I believe that we have a built-in process to reconcile those two things that seem totally different. And that process is grief. Allows us to honor our dreams because they do matter. It allows us to integrate them into who we are. They don't go away. They become woven into the fabric of our lives. I mean, depending on the degree of the loss, I sometimes get the image of a tree that has been struck by lightning and it has a scar, but the tree itself is still alive and continues to grow. Loss is part of life. To switch up my tree metaphors, I believe that our dreams are like branches as we reach to the sky and spread and expand. But it is our sorrows that give us our roots, sinking deep into the soil, reaching down into that rich darkness that has a life of its own, and it grounds us. It gives us compassion. It gives us understanding, literally deepening our experience. And it is the weight of that groundedness that allows us to spread our branches even further, higher and wider. It is a balance. They work together to enrich our ability to live. The goal of this processing, including grief, including learning, including how we approach the world, is to strengthen our confidence in our ability to deal with whatever life gives us. Life is changing so fast right now, and it really does feel like it's accelerating. We are at a time of intense transition. So many things are falling away, and yet so many things are coming forth. We need to integrate these processes, such as grief, into part of our regular lives so that we can keep up with the transitions, so that we can build new dreams, new ideas, new understandings, a new world now, every day. The next question is, okay, that sounds great, but how? I like looking at very concrete, practical steps that are not the be all and end all. They are not a cure, but they can give a direction. It's a starting point. How do you process efficiently, authentically when you're dealing with loss? And a lot of this is what has worked for me. I do not claim to know truth, capital T truth myself, but I do have an awareness and a knowledge and a proof of concept of at least one that this worked for me. If it works for others, I am delighted and I want to share. Dealing with my own grief, the first thing I looked at was physiology. I mentioned about grief living in the body. It can be so difficult when you got all these chemical things going on. Was I staying hydrated? My breathing coming back into my body, the type of breathing that I'm doing, coming back into presence, calming down, rest. Even when I couldn't sleep, did I give myself space to just rest? Nutrition. I didn't want to eat. I wasn't hungry. So I made sure that when I did eat, it was very nutrient dense foods. How do I deal with the low hanging fruit of my overall resilience? For me, that always comes back to physiology. This mortal form, how do I get it? How do I support it so that I can deal more easily with all of the mental, emotional, and everything? The second thing I found very useful was really paying attention to my thoughts. What was coming up? What were the stories I was telling? What were my regrets? I had so many arguments with Sean after he died. And in other situations too. Something I was working on that completely fell apart. What were the stories I was telling myself? Was I blaming myself? Was I getting caught up with shoulds? I know a lot of people, they get caught up in conflicting shoulds, especially when it is the loss of a loved one, where on the one hand, they feel guilty because they're still wallowing and their word, not mine. And it's like, I should be over it by now. It's like, well, if you're not, then you're not. And at the same time, they feel guilty about moving on because, well, isn't that disloyal? Very cautious about where the shoulds are creeping into your experience because they're not real. They're indications that there's some sort of story going on that may not be supporting where you are. where you are going, who you are, and who you are becoming. Because grief does change who we are. Loss changes who we are. And sometimes it's hard to say goodbye to the old you. I know gratitude is so magical. And I often incorporate that in the third part of my personal strategy, I guess I could call it, which is making sure to set aside time and space to allow what wants to come up, what wants to be felt. With so many things that need to be done, taken care of, figured out, some people find it self-indulgent, selfish maybe, or just not practical, quote unquote, to take the time to grieve. The truth is that it is so useful. It is foundational. It is important, and it actually makes the rest of life easier. If you're constantly pushing things down and pushing them away, it is draining your energy because you're using your energy in the pushing down and shoving away instead of allowing it to come forth and honoring, nurturing, finding the gratitude. I want to take a brief moment to talk about what gratitude is and is not, because I heard someone talking about a friend of theirs who was a long-time friend. We're talking 50 years of friendship, and the friend was dying of cancer. And this gentleman was talking about he had read the importance of being in a state of gratitude, and he was trying so hard to figure out how to be grateful for his friend's cancer. And I'm like, that's not how it works. I mean, uh, it is possible to find gratitude in that, but that's also called spiritual bypass. That is ignoring your heart. That is ignoring how you feel. Living in a state of gratitude does not mean trying to force yourself to be grateful for things you hate. It's about what are you grateful for? In the case of this gentleman who was losing part of himself, because when someone who has been that close to you is gone, you actually lose that part of yourself that you could only be when you were with them. And that is deserving of grief. At the same time, it is possible to be grateful for 50 years of friendship. Be grateful for the space that they have created in your life, that they have created, the person that they have created in you, how they have affected you. That is living in a state of gratitude. And gratitude and sorrow do not cancel each other out. Laughter and tears even anger and love, emotions do not cancel each other out. We're better than that. Humans are capable of amazing things. We contain multitudes, and it's beautiful. It's what makes us human. I am very drawn to this work. I've been studying it for years. I've been experiencing it with a different type of study for the past few years. And the conditions in the world right now are such that I am feeling drawn to helping people, I guess, learn how to grieve. How do you um, move through this? One of the ways that I am doing this is I am offering free 45-minute sorrow to strength breakthrough strategy sessions. The purpose is to help honor your losses, come to terms with your new reality so that you can integrate your losses into that warp and weft of your life in a way that deepens your ability to live. And this is what I do. And it's really funny because I was going to drop the link in the chat, and I did something so that it no longer exists. My link disappeared. So I will be sending it with the recording. And I am actually going to bring this to a close. Thank you very much for joining me. And I look forward to further contact. Remember that the purpose of life is not simply to be happy. The purpose of life is to live.